Every morning, before the first sunlight even slips through the window, Mrs. Land, now 67, wakes up with a familiar feeling, a stiff, uncomfortable tightness spreading across her lower back. She stays still for a few seconds, takes a deep breath, and tries to turn her body. But just the slightest movement sends a sharp pain shooting through her back, reminding her that she is no longer young. It's probably just age, she tells herself. The worry quietly lingers inside her. Morning after morning, the pain shows up like an unwelcome guest, stubborn, persistent, and impossible to ignore. But today feels different. Yesterday, her granddaughter sent her a video about simple morning exercises that help older adults ease back pain. Mrs. Land usually avoids exercise, but one sentence in the video stayed in her mind. The pain you feel when you wake up isn't because you're getting old, it's because your spine has been sleeping too long and needs to be awakened. The words struck her deeply, as if someone finally understood exactly what she'd been feeling. So this morning, instead of forcing herself upright and bracing for the pain, she decides to try the first exercise. She lies on her back, breathes in slowly, and gently pulls her right knee toward her chest. At first her back feels tight, but after a few seconds, a warm and soothing sensation begins to spread across her lower spine. She exhales, lowers her leg, and switches sides. This time, she can clearly feel her back muscles stretching, like the stiff, tangled fibers that had been frozen all night are finally being loosened. She moves slowly, matching each pull of her knee with a deep, calm breath. Just like the instructor said, when she brings both knees to her chest, a wave of relief spreads across her lower back, a feeling she hasn't experienced in a long time. Mrs. Land smiles softly as she holds the pose. She thinks, so I don't have to live with this pain forever. Comment number 1. The knees to chest stretch may look simple, but it's a powerful way to free the spine after hours of stillness. This gentle movement reduces pressure on the discs, improves blood flow, and wakes up the lower back muscles, the ones that stiffen the most overnight. For older adults, it's one of the most important morning exercises because it not only brings quick relief, but also sets the body up for smooth, comfortable movement throughout the day. Done right on the bed with calm breathing, it becomes a morning ritual, a soft, safe way to ease the body into a new day. Mrs. Land lowers her legs and closes her eyes for a moment. The sharp pain she dreads each morning is gone. In its place is a lightness, as if an invisible weight has finally been lifted off her back. She knows this is only the beginning, but this first exercise alone is enough to give her hope. Mornings can be gentle again. After finishing the first exercise, Mrs. Land sat for a moment, breathing softly, then slowly placed her feet on the bed. Her back felt less tight now, but her abdominal muscles still seemed weak, almost as if they weren't ready to lift her body fully upright. She remembered the second exercise from the video, what the doctor called a pelvic tilt. A tiny movement often overlooked but incredibly important. Mrs. Land used to think these exercises were only for young people, but the doctor's explanation caught her curiosity. Even the smallest motion can wake up the deep core muscles, the very muscles that work like a protective belt for the spine. She lay back down, knees bent, feet planted firmly on the bed. One hand rested on her stomach, the other slipped under her lower back. Just as instructed, she inhaled deeply through her nose, feeling her belly rise slightly. As she exhaled, she gently tightened her abdomen and pressed her lower back toward the mattress. It was just a few millimeters of movement, but she could feel her spine becoming more stable. Her abdominal muscles trembled, not from pain, but because they hadn't been used in a long time. She repeated the motion a second time, then a third, each representative feeling more natural. She noticed that with every breath, her body loosened a little more. The muscles that used to ache whenever she stood up now felt like they were slowly waking up. By the 8th repetition, a warm, soothing heat spread across her lower waist, like new blood was finally flowing in to nourish those long tired muscles. When she finished, Mrs. Land didn't rush to sit up. She stayed still for a moment, letting herself feel the change. Deep inside, she sensed something returning to her, control over her own body. Something she once believed age had taken away for good. She no longer felt helpless when thinking about getting up after long hours of lying down. The fear of sudden pain wasn't there anymore. Slowly, she pushed herself up with her hands, rising carefully. The cool floor beneath her feet made her aware of the steadiness in her legs. Her body was still weak, yes, but she felt more confident about taking her first steps of the morning. Today, she wasn't just doing an exercise. She was learning to listen to her body again, piece by piece. And most importantly, she was rediscovering a sense of control she thought she had lost to age long ago. As that sense of stability spread down her legs, Mrs. Land rose from the bed and walked toward the familiar wooden chair in the corner of her room. This chair had been with her for years, through the days she cared for her husband, and the years her children grew up and left home. It was simple and sturdy, and today, it became her newest exercise equipment. The third exercise in the video was the sit-to-stand movement, a controlled version of something she did every day, yet had never realized could be such an important practice. She placed her feet parallel, hip-width apart, planting them firmly on the floor. Her hands rested lightly on her thighs before she brought them together in front of her chest. Just like the instructor, she inhaled, leaned forward slightly, feeling her weight shift gently onto her legs. As she exhaled, she pressed through her heels and lifted herself up. She wobbled for a moment. Standing still, she waited until her balance returned, then slowly lowered herself back into the chair. There was no rushing like every other morning. She moved with intention, with awareness. Each time she stood, she felt the ground beneath her feet. Each time she sat, she listened to her knees and her back, keeping her spine tall just as the doctor advised. By the fourth repetition, her thighs began to feel heavy, but it wasn't the uncomfortable kind of fatigue. Instead, it felt like her muscles were waking up. She couldn't remember the last time her legs felt this engaged. Maybe years ago, when she used to cook, clean, and run up and down the stairs without giving it a second thought. By the sixth repetition, she found her own rhythm. Inhale, lean forward, stand, balance, sit slowly. A steady circle of movement, like the exercises she once practiced in her younger days but had long forgotten. Each cycle brought a little confidence, a little control, a little whisper of, "I can still do this." When she finished, she stayed seated, her hands resting gently on her knees. Her breathing was warm and steady. The tension she carried every morning had softened, replaced by a quiet, familiar peace. She no longer felt like she was fighting her body. Instead, she was finally working with it, step by step. Outside the porch, the morning light had begun to brighten, casting a soft glow across the leaves. Mrs. Land knew there were more exercises ahead, but the thought didn't worry her anymore. She had completed the first 3 steps of her journey, a journey she once thought she was too old to begin. Yet somehow, she had started at exactly the right time. After resting on the chair for a few minutes, Mrs. Land stood up and returned to her bed. The next exercise she remembered from the video was the hip lift, a movement the doctor called a foundation for protecting the lower back because it activates the body's biggest muscle groups, the glutes and the hamstrings. In the past, she never realized how much strength she had lost in these muscles, until the back pain showed up every time she bent down or stood up too quickly. She spread a small towel across the bed and lay down carefully. Her knees bent once again, feet steady and grounded on the mattress. She placed her arms straight by her sides, palms facing down as if searching for extra stability. Before starting, she closed her eyes and took a deep breath, then opened them and looked up at the ceiling. Soft light filtered through the thin curtain, reflecting gently above her, bringing a rare sense of peace to her morning. As she exhaled, she slowly squeezed her glutes, just like the video instructed. She felt the sides of her hips tighten slightly, and then her pelvis began to rise from the bed. The movement felt awkward at first, but after a moment, she sensed a light, cooperative lift, not forced, simply her body responding to her effort. She held the position for 3 seconds, 3 short seconds, but enough for her to recognize how weak those long neglected muscles had become. Her spine stretched like a softly drawn bow, not painful, just a warm, gentle tension running from her lower back down to the back of her thighs. When she lowered herself, she did it slowly, letting each vertebra return to place as if she were setting old bricks back into a rebuilt wall. By the third repetition, her breathing had become steady. By the fifth, her lower back felt more supported, less shaky. By the eighth, she could clearly feel strength returning to the area that had once felt the weakest. Between each lift, she paused to feel the heat spreading through her lower back. It wasn't a burning or uncomfortable heat, but the soothing warmth of a hot compress resting on an aching spot, quieting the fatigue that had lived there for years. When she finished, she lay still with her hands on her belly, breathing softly. The ceiling looked the same as when she began, but to her, everything felt different. Her body no longer felt as heavy as usual. She felt present inside herself, clearer, steadier. Mrs. Land rolled to her side and pushed herself up. Her body was tired, but it was the kind of tired that made her feel younger. As if she was rebuilding a part of herself that time had quietly worn down. She knew there was still one final exercise left to complete her morning routine. And for the first time in years, she wasn't worried about what was next. Instead, she looked forward to it, something that even she found surprising. Mrs. Land gently placed her feet on the floor and walked toward the chair by the window. The thin curtain swayed softly in the breeze, carrying the gentle scent of early morning. The cool air made her feel as if she had just completed a long journey, but knew it wasn't time to finish yet. The final exercise, diaphragmatic breathing, was the one she looked forward to most. The doctor had said it didn't just help her relax, it sealed the whole routine. Like a closing circle that tells the body it's safe to begin the day. She sat at the edge of the chair, keeping her back tall, both feet grounded firmly on the floor. One hand rested on her chest, the other on her belly. She closed her eyes. In that soft darkness, she could hear her heartbeat, slow, steady, calm. She inhaled through her nose, counting 4 slow seconds. The hand on her belly rose gently while the hand on her chest stayed still. Just as she'd been taught, the air entered like warm water flowing downward, softening every muscle still holding tension from the earlier exercises. Then she exhaled softly through her lips for 6 slow seconds, as if blowing out a faraway candle. The first breath brought relief. The second loosened her shoulders. By the third, she felt a quiet peace spreading from her chest all the way to her lower back. Each breath out felt like she was letting go of old fatigue, of sleepless nights from pain, of mornings that began with a heavy sigh. By the fifth breath, her eyes stung slightly, not from pain, but from the realization that she had forgotten what it felt like for her body to truly soften. Since her husband passed away, she had lived quietly, and the back pain had followed her every morning like a small shadow. It made her believe aging only meant more loss. But today, with just one proper breath, she felt something different: connection, warmth, a quiet life returning through the gentle movements she had just practiced. When she opened her eyes, the morning light fell softly across her hands. Her belly rose and fell with even breaths, and her back no longer carried the heavy stiffness she woke up with. She placed her hands on her thighs, sat a little taller, and felt as if her spine had just been watered, smooth, alive, and flexible again. Mrs. Land stood up, no fear of sudden pain, no bracing herself the way she used to every morning. She simply stood, naturally, easily, lightly. For the first time in years, she felt like she was truly awake, not just because the sun was up, but because her body was finally willing to step into the new day with her. Mrs. Land stood by the window, her hands resting softly on the wooden sill worn smooth by time. The gentle morning light settled over her shoulders, making her silver hair shine like fine threads of light. Outside, the small road in front of her house was beginning to stir, distant motorbikes. Birds calling to each other beneath the branches. A simple morning, but for her, today meant something different. Her body no longer felt as heavy as it used to. Every step, every small movement felt lighter, more natural. She turned back to look at the room where she had just spent barely 10 minutes. 10 simple minutes that somehow meant so much. Those minutes didn't just warm her muscles. They warmed her sense of trust in her own body. A trust she had believed was gone forever. She placed a hand on her lower back, the place that had stopped her every morning. Now, it was no longer a shadow she feared, but a part of herself learning how to move with her again. She knew the pain wouldn't disappear overnight. She knew age was still present, in every gray hair, every line on her skin. But through the simple movements she'd just done, she felt clearly that her body wasn't abandoning her. It had simply been waiting for her to wake it up. A faint breeze brushed past her, and she shivered slightly, but this time, instead of the familiar stiffness in her back, she felt a soft ease, as if her spine had been freshly oiled. Mrs. Land smiled, a small, warm smile. It reminded her of a sentence from the video her granddaughter sent. "It's not your back that's getting old, it's just forgotten how to move." She gently closed the curtain and walked to the kitchen to make herself a warm cup of tea. The rising steam carried a delicate fragrance through the air, like a little gift to her morning. She took a sip, feeling the warmth flow down into her belly, blending with the gentle heat from the exercises she had just done. A vibrant, life-filled sensation began to move through her body, awakening something in every cell. She felt more alive, not alive out of habit, or duty, or old routines, but alive in the truest sense, with awareness, with movement, with moments she offered herself as an act of quiet care. She knew tomorrow, and the days after, would bring challenges. The pain might return, fatigue might visit again, but now she had these small movements, light enough to begin without fear, strong enough to remind her body how to feel well. Setting the cup down on the table, she whispered softly, to herself more than anyone else, "As long as I can move, I can live lightly." And for Mrs. Land, that was a new beginning, starting from this very morning.